Hey e-commerce marketing podcast listener, I wanted to let you know that we have created 16 e-commerce marketing videos for you. You can download these free videos by visiting ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/videos or by texting the word videos to +1 480 418 1411. These step-by-step video marketing tutorials will teach you how to drive more traffic to your e-commerce website, how to get more backlinks to your e-commerce website, and how to optimize your website to get more paid customers. Get the videos right now by visiting ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/videos or by texting videos to +1 480 418 1411. Welcome to the e-commerce marketing podcast. Today's guest is Sam Boyd, and he's from guidedimports.com. Welcome to the podcast, Sam. How are you doing?
Thank you so much, Robert. I'm great. Thank you.
So today we're going to be talking about sourcing from China. This is like some hot trend that's going on right now. A lot of businesses getting into selling on Amazon, and it's just something that's really hot, that's really happening. And I wanted to have you on because you're the go-to guy as far as private labeling and sourcing from China. But before we get into the topic, why don't you just let us know about yourself and how you ended up doing what you do right now?
Yeah, definitely. So I have been dealing with China, I guess, since 2008. I studied Chinese in university. I done business there prior to moving here. Once I got to China, I started working for a product development company. I enjoyed it, but I didn't like the idea of having a boss. So once I learned the ins and outs of international trade, I started my own sourcing business, which was helping customers get products made from factories in China, and we would get them shipped to retail stores and some e-commerce stores.
Okay.
So we sort of grew from there. Now we help a lot of e-commerce sellers, but that's basically the gist of what it is that I do. And, we've been able to grow a pretty decent sized team, all operating out of China, and, I guess loving every second of it.
Okay. And what countries do you serve? Like, where are some of your customers from? Are they from around the world, or do you just focus on the US, Canada, UK?
Right. So a lot of our customers are selling in North America. That seems to be the most popular market. And we cater now, with Guided Imports, we cater towards private label sellers and also e-commerce sellers. So since the biggest market is the US, a lot of people are selling in the US, but we also export goods to Europe, the Middle East, and also Australia. And then we have customers all over the world. So we do have our reaches sort of almost everywhere.
Okay. And what exactly is your service? What do you do for your customers?
Yeah, so what we do is we're a sourcing company, but we sort of handle it in a different fashion than how original sourcing companies or traditional sourcing companies work, where they help people find products. They take a small commission or they take a percentage of some sort, and they act as a middleman. So this model works very well with retail sales, where people are doing tens of thousands or hundreds of $1,000s worth of orders. But when you look at e-commerce, the order size is much smaller because the sale is so much more surgical. And because of that, this commission-based modeling doesn't work. So we offer a service where we take over all aspects of dealing with China on behalf of our customers. We use our feet on the ground as the purchasing office, and we act as the purchasing team for our customers, dealing with factories, finding factories, negotiating, managing shipping. So essentially, we are an extra employee for companies who are selling products on Amazon, getting them manufactured in China, or selling them on e-commerce where they're getting manufactured in China.
Okay. And from your experience, what are some, I guess now we're going to get into the topics of sourcing from China, but what are the common mistakes that you've seen online as far as advice? Or a lot of people are talking about sourcing from China, but maybe they don't get into everything. Maybe they don't mention some common pitfalls, or they probably just talk about, okay, China is great, it's going to increase your margin and you can get inventory from them. But what are they really not saying?
China is a beast. I mean, all in itself, it's the largest country in the world. Their output is huge and their business practices are so much different than anywhere else in the entire world. It's exciting, especially with e-commerce booming right now, and also Amazon being this huge elephant where anyone can get onto Amazon and start their own small business. Because Amazon is so exciting, a lot of people look at this as an opportunity that anyone can make millions doing this. And one of the immediate things that I try to explain to people who are new to sourcing from China or new to selling on Amazon or bringing their products into e-commerce is this isn't a get rich quick scheme. Dealing with China is difficult. It's not easy. There's a lot to learn. And while it can be exciting to read about these incredible case studies where people are doing millions of dollars worth of revenue every year by just sitting behind their computer and sipping Mai Tais, there's a lot more to learn and understand about China. And without doing that before moving forward and looking towards this place as a location for offshore manufacturing, you could run into some serious difficulties. So I think that's one of the initial things that I like to point out to people, especially when they're a beginner and they have no idea how to start or where to go. Mm-hmm. That's one of the early things that we like to explain to people that you truly need to respect.
So yeah, like many of the beginners, when they get into it, they've probably had one of those case studies and they're excited that, oh, hey, maybe this is one way I can make money. I can get rich really quickly and I can just retire and then, move to a private island. But it's not that easy. It's just like everything else. You really do have to put in your time to get whatever profit or reward you're going after.
Yeah, I think you're right. And when I try to explain how difficult China is, we start with the analogy where getting a product manufactured in China, it's not as simple as just going to a deli and ordering a sandwich. It's also not as simple as going to a bakery or baking a cake from scratch. It's almost equivalent to being asked to bake a cake from scratch, but not knowing any of the ingredients that are inside of a cake, and you have to go and find all of these ingredients and start testing, figuring out how do I make this cake. And because of the business being so different, it is necessary for people who are interested in this to start doing some research, reading about it. There's tons of information that's free online that you can look into. There's blogs, there's videos. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So I was going to say, when they've already done their research and then they're ready to jump in, I guess the first step is trying to find suppliers and manufacturers.
Yeah, definitely. So there's tons of suppliers in China. There's tons of factories. And if you have an idea of a product or you're currently selling a product and you'd like to see if you can get it directly from the source, you can hop onto Alibaba or globalsources.com and start finding factories that are making this exact product. Now, the most important thing in this, and this we'll sort of jump into, do a little bit of fast forwarding and assume that people understand China. They understand how to find suppliers, how to use global sources to speak with suppliers. So what are the things that you really need to look out for when you're speaking with these suppliers? And some of the key things that I like to make sure that people understand is when you're looking for suppliers, the very last thing you want to be looking at is price. Price is a dangerous vehicle when everything that you're doing is guided purely by the price because of how volatile suppliers are in China. So once you take price out of it, you then want to try to be as selective as possible when you're looking for suppliers, because when you search for factories, you're going to see tons of them. And you want to be able to find the ones who communicate well, who present themselves as legitimate companies and provide the necessary amount of information about the product that you're interested in purchasing. And while a lot of people, when they first start out doing this, or even after they've been doing this for a while, when they start speaking with factories, they get very excited and they almost feel as though they need to show off to these factories. They need to make them think, oh, we're this big buyer, almost overcompensating, because they know in reality, they've been able to create their own business behind their computer. Mm-hmm. They want to make it seem like they have a giant company, where in reality, that's not really necessary. What you want to be focusing on is having these suppliers validate themselves to you. Do they have the amount of experience? Do they have the amount of understanding? And certainly, can they produce the products that you're looking to get made at the level that your customers require? So this is really the one of the first steps into dealing with suppliers. And while we'll see a lot of guides will tell us, okay, here are 5 tips for finding a qualified supplier, the true focus for anyone who's dealing with China is to come up with your own solution as to what makes a supplier qualified for your company. And for some people, that will be they accept Alibaba's trade assurance, which is like escrow, or they have phenomenal pictures on their website. For people like us, when we're sourcing products for suppliers, we're looking at their business contracts. We're looking at making sure that their businesses are fully licensed, that they have proper certifications, that their certifications are real. It's super easy to fake certifications. So we want to make sure that they're actually legitimate certifications. We want to see, are they producing these products in the same market, and are there existing happy customers? So a lot of times people think, well, I'm not going to ask China for references because maybe they're not going to give them to me. Well, if you want to work with a new accountant, you're going to ask them for references. If you're going to work with a factory, you should ask them for references as well. Sometimes they'll give them to you, which is good. If they don't want to give them to you, that could be considered a red flag. So building yourself this list of key reasons to qualify and disqualify a supplier is really what's going to make your sourcing process and finding good factories simple.
And what about the language barrier? Is there a language barrier, or a lot of these manufacturers and suppliers, are a lot of them, do they have an English speaking team, or how do you just find somebody if you don't know Chinese or you don't have a translator? How does that play out?
Yeah, so for the most part, everyone who you will find on these supplier database websites will speak English to some regard. It's kind of funny. I've brought some clients over to China and had them meet some of the suppliers, or we go to different trade fairs. And when we're both speaking English, when I speak to the suppliers and when the client speaks to the suppliers are always able to understand me, or they sometimes have a difficult time understanding the client. And the reason for this is I simplify everything. Okay. And it's important to know that when you are speaking with these Chinese people who English is not their first language, taking away all types of complex words or any form of speech that would confuse a fourth grader, you want to take that out and speak clearly and slowly, and they should be fine. Usually communication is only an issue once you start negotiating and once you start changing your product requirements. But there are certain things that you can always do to make sure that if communication is a difficult thing to overcome with one supplier, there are tricks that you can use when you're purchasing to make sure that they fully understand everything.
Okay. And once you've gone through that whole database and you find the supplier that you want to use for your product, how do you ensure that they will be producing great products? How can you have quality control?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's probably, as e-commerce is growing and more people are looking at China, the largest concern we're seeing lately is quality control. Because every single person who touches your product has the opportunity to publish something about that product, about your product on your site or online, and it's going to stay there forever. There's never been a time in retail where every single customer has been able to listen to every other customer's concerns or feedback prior to e-commerce. With quality control being the biggest one, anyone who's purchasing from China, one of the most important things that you need to factor into every single shipment, we're not talking every other shipment or we're not talking every first shipment, is to have quality control. You want to have a third-party quality inspection company go to the factory during the production to inspect the goods. This is something that can't be avoided. This is something that many people choose to neglect. But by having a non-partial third-party inspector go to a factory to inspect the goods and to provide an inspection report, there's no other way for you to feel comfortable knowing that the supplier produced exactly what it was you were looking for, unless you do something like this. Because a factory is always going to say, yeah, the products are fine. We did quality control on them and we didn't find any. There's no problem. Of course they're going to say that because they want you to spend all your money, and it's in their best interest for the order to go smoothly. So quality control 100% all the time. It's around $300 per order. You can use all types of companies. You can just do a quick Google search to find these guys, and it can end up saving you thousands.
And do you tell this third-party company the requirements that you want the product to meet? Do you let them know ahead of time that these are the specifications? I want this product to have this, to meet these requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one of the more important things, and that's why fully understanding your product is also important. Fully understanding where are the weak points in your product. If you got multiple samples from multiple suppliers, where were people screwing up? Is there a part in your product that uses paint and sometimes the paint was chipping, or was there stitching you need to ensure that the stitching is strong and straight. So all of this stuff is what you want to have ready, so you can talk to your quality controller and you can tell them that this is what we want you looking out for. These are some of the things that we saw as weaknesses in the product, and we want you to make sure that these are checked. Also, this is how the product should look. So if you're having bouncy balls manufactured, you want to make sure that it's a perfect sphere. There's no seams where the silicone shows that it was used to make a mold. It needs to bounce. Like it's going over with this quality controller how the product is supposed to work, what it's supposed to look like, what it's supposed to do, so they can then use that information when they go to the factories. And I want to point out, because a lot of people who are new to this don't fully understand how quality control works. Almost every single quality control inspector is not going to test of your products. It's not practical. There's too many products. When people are doing orders of thousands or tens of thousands of products, there's too many to check. So what they do is they do statistical sampling. During World War II, the U.S. government, the U.S. military produced they produced a document that basically, it's called the accepted quality limit for manufacturing. Mm-hmm. And they say that if we want to manufacture 10,000 units of something, and we want the quality to reach X standard, this is the percentage that an inspector needs to check to ensure that percentage is met. And that's what quality inspectors do today. They do statistical sampling on the products. So it's important for an e-commerce seller to understand that when you're using these inspectors, they're not going to be looking at every single product. There are going to be defects. That's one of the most difficult things in e-commerce right now, is how do we solve this solution of getting rid of all the defects? Because when one person gets a defect, people are going to complain and they're going to talk about it. So while quality control is important, it should always be known that they're trying to find the lowest amount of defects possible. And that means that there still will be some, but to get your production where there's zero, it's often going to turn out to be more costly than producing in China.
Okay, so yeah, that is definitely something that good to have in mind as you look into sourcing from China. With payment, in your notes you mentioned that you shouldn't pay the sellers using PayPal. Why is this something that people should avoid?
Yeah, I think as most of your listeners would agree, PayPal is commonly used for all types of e-commerce transactions. So it only makes sense to use PayPal when you're paying factories. I tell everyone that PayPal is a bad idea. The reason why is it's expensive. When you're dealing with factories, you're sending them thousands of dollars. The processing fees alone, which the factories will say that you're responsible for if you want to use PayPal, are 3%, 4%. These are really high fees when you're looking at thousands of dollars worth of orders. So from a cost perspective alone, it's expensive. PayPal also doesn't. Their terms don't offer protection for customized products made out of China, private labeled product. It's so when people think, well, if I use PayPal as a safety net, so worst case scenario is I follow a dispute and get my money back, they're not really going to get protection. And the most dangerous part about that mentality is if you're utilizing PayPal to be your safety net, to be your, if all else fails, I'll dispute the claim on PayPal, then you've done a very bad job sourcing the supplier. Because your goal when you're sourcing a supplier is to find a supplier that is qualified to do business with you. And that one of those things means being able to send them money under an agreement from two different countries, and you're confident that they're going to produce the goods that you've requested. Mm-hmm. And finally, PayPal's not the way this industry works. As exciting as China is for a lot of people who are looking to or are already manufacturing there, this is an incredibly old industry. It's outdated and it's complex. And most people, when you're dealing with international trade, they like to stick to the traditions that have always been done. And by trying to use something as amateurish as PayPal, it tags you as someone who's naive in this industry, and there's a good chance that tag will mean that you could easily be taken advantage of.
Okay. So yeah, they'll just know you're a noob. So
yeah, exactly. So I guess the final question is: so how do you pay them? And traditionally, what you want to do is a wire transfer. You want to go to your bank and ask to do an international wire transfer. Usually, with factories, the way they work things is you'll pay a small deposit up front. It's usually 30% of the production. Mm-hmm. And then once the goods are complete and your quality inspector has tested the goods and your inspection report has come back as a passing grade, then you can pay the final deposit to get the goods released.
It definitely makes sense. PayPal can seem convenient, especially if coming from the e-commerce world. You handle some payments from PayPal. So it kind of makes sense. Oh, it's really convenient. But when you're dealing with these suppliers, it's definitely best just to use the wire transfer. Because even when you're working and handling other payments or services that you do for your business, not all of them you'll do with PayPal. You only do PayPal for the most convenient, easy, or
small ticket transactions.
Exactly, small amounts. But something like this, a wire transfer, and you're still protected because you're just given 30% discount, and then you make the full payment once everything has been done.
Yeah, and it's also important to understand that there's no risk-free way to deal with China. There is a risk in dealing with China. It's an inexpensive solution for a lot of businesses, but it's not perfect. And I mean, when you look at a company like ours, where we offer a solution to take over all aspects of importing from China and manufacturing in China, we also tell our customers that we're not guaranteeing nothing is going to go wrong. We're not promising you that with us on your side, this process is going to be without a doubt bulletproof. That's not necessarily what we do. What we try to do is we try to explain that we've made a lot of mistakes in the past, and there's a lot of mistakes that could be made, and the processes of how we do business, the processes of how we work with factories, we do so in a way that mitigates those risks and brings them down to a very low percent. So while I would confidently say you have less risk using us, there still is risk regardless of what happens when you're dealing with China, whether it is payments or whether it's you doing quality control or even finding a qualified supplier. Things happen. Things always do happen. We're sort of here just to make sure everything is done so those bad things have a very, very little chance of happening. And for the people who are afraid, like they don't like how that sounds, it's usually a good determining factor to tell you that maybe purchasing from China is not right for you. And it would be more ideal for you to continue purchasing domestically or from another country.
And how can listeners find you if they want to use your service, if they have questions about sourcing? What's the best place to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can always get in contact with me through our website, which is guidedimports.com. You can email us at info@guidedimports.com. I'm usually pretty responsive when it comes to inbound emails. I'm usually the first one that likes to talk to customers and figure out if our service is good for them. And apart from that, you can also find me on Facebook. I'm on a couple groups. We have our own Facebook group. So there's a couple places where you'll be able to find me. I'm pretty accessible.
Any final thoughts on what we've covered with sourcing from China?
I'd probably just like to say, for those who are new, look into it, do some research, try to do one production on your own to see what it's like. Don't expect to make a lot of money, but just get the experience of dealing with China. For those who are currently purchasing from China and you're looking for a way to streamline your business to allow service to take over all aspects while you stay in the loop in its entirety, we could definitely be a solution for that. Or you can always look at all different types of sourcing services. They're definitely all there to help you.
The last question I usually ask for the podcast is, what is one thing an e-commerce business can do right now to help them grow, get traffic, get leads, just achieve their goals? What advice would you give any e-commerce business, and what action should they take right now to help them be a step closer to their goals?
So while I'm probably not the best person to give advice from a marketing standpoint, I can hopefully give advice from a e-commerce product improvement perspective. And if you're selling products currently that are getting reviews that are less than perfect, that means that there's always room for improvement. And by working with China, whether it's working with a new factory than you currently have, changing the way your current factory is operating, or coming to China from your existing source, being able to change those reviews by modifying your product is a very helpful way to show people that not only are you growing, but you're listening to what they're saying. And by using China, you can always tweak your products. You can always make them better. You can always look for rooms of improvement. And your customers, your reviews are the best place to find that information.
Okay, Sam, thanks for being on the e-commerce marketing podcast.
Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the e-commerce marketing podcast. Join the e-commerce marketing podcast Facebook group to learn, connect, collaborate, and grow with other e-commerce marketers at ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/FB. ecommercemarketingpodcast.com/FB. Subscribe to us on iTunes by searching for e-commerce marketing podcast, and please leave a rating and a review. Thank you for listening. See you next time.